At the family party, with fairy lights strung like promises overhead and laughter echoing off champagne glasses, my father raised his glass, looked straight at me, and said, "Avery, try not to embarrass us tonight like you always do." Some cousins laughed. My aunt sipped her wine. My mother looked down at her plate. No one said anything. Neither did I. I simply excused myself, walked out past the perfectly trimmed hedges, got in my car, and drove away. No tears, no drama, just a silence sharp enough to slice through every memory of trying to belong. That was the last time I attended a Harrington gathering, because that night, I stopped trying to earn their pride. And a year later, I bought my dream house. Then I threw the most beautiful party of my life. And they found out. On Instagram. Growing up, a Harrington meant learning early that there were only 3 acceptable definitions of success: degrees, titles, and quiet obedience. My brother, Marcus, followed that script flawlessly. Harvard Medical, now a well-respected surgeon with 2 kids who never wear anything wrinkled. My sister, Claire, made partner at a law firm by 31 and married a man who owns 3 golf memberships. Me? I painted on walls, rearranged furniture obsessively as a child, and once turned the garage into a greenhouse for a 6th-grade science fair. I wasn't the golden child, I was the creative one. Every time I shared something I was proud of, like a mural, I got commissioned for a community center or a sustainable redesign project, I got the same reaction: a tilt of the head, a polite smile, then a quick subject change to Marcus's latest surgery, or Claire's new Tesla. I remember once overhearing my aunt tell someone at a wedding, "Avery's sweet, she just hasn't found her lane yet." I was 29, running my own small interior design studio. Living in a sunlit apartment I curated down to the last detail. But to them, I was still the strange one with candles and mood boards. They didn't see intention. They saw instability. They didn't hear passion. They heard risk. I tried, for years, to close the gap. I'd show up early to family dinners, offer to decorate for events, even helped redo my parents' entire living room free of charge. When they hosted Claire's engagement party, I built the floral arch by hand. They said it looked quirky. When I gave Marcus a watercolor sketch of his newborn son's nursery, he laughed and said, "Thanks, but we're going with a real decorator." By the time I turned 30, I stopped offering. Not because I was angry, but because I realized some people will never respect a version of success they don't recognize. Holidays, for most people, are about warmth, tradition, shared memories. For me, they were landmines wrapped in ribbon. Every Thanksgiving, I'd walk in with a pie I baked from scratch, only to hear my dad say, "Claire brought wine, Marcus brought prime rib, Avery brought feelings, I guess." Everyone chuckled like it was clever. I'd just smile and head to the kitchen, where I belonged, apparently. At Christmas, while my siblings bragged about bonuses and real estate, someone would inevitably turn to me and ask, "So, are you still doing that feng shui stuff?" As if my career were a phase, like braces or journaling. The worst was Mother's Day 2 years ago. I had spent days designing a custom herb wall for my mom's garden. She loved cooking with fresh basil. I built it by hand, stenciled her initials in the corner. She barely looked at it. Meanwhile, Claire handed her a luxury handbag, and the room erupted in applause. No one even noticed I had dirt under my nails. They never yelled. They didn't need to. Everything was delivered with a smile, a clink of a glass, a pat on the shoulder, like passive aggression wrapped in monogrammed napkins. The unspoken message was always clear. I was the odd one, the aesthetic one, the disappointment who dressed nice but couldn't really contribute. I started dreading the invitations. Not because I didn't love family, but because every gathering became a mirror showing me just how invisible I truly was. One Easter, I arrived late, and my name card was missing. They gave me a paper one someone wrote in marker. Claire laughed. "Look, Avery's got the arts and crafts place." Even my chair wobbled. I tried to laugh it off. I always did. But with each smirk, each jab, something inside me dulled. It wasn't that I didn't belong. It was that they made sure I never forgot it. So by the time that anniversary party rolled around, the one where my father made that remark in front of 50 people, the damage wasn't sudden. It was slow. Cumulative. Like a canvas layered with so many insults it could no longer breathe. And that night, I finally stepped away from the painting. It was their 40th anniversary. The Harringtons rented out a country estate with twinkling garden lights, a jazz trio, and a string of catered courses no one could pronounce. Claire organized the seating chart. Marcus brought a slideshow. I wore a dress I made myself, silk, dusky rose, hand-stitched neckline. I thought maybe, just maybe, tonight would be different. During dinner, Claire raised her glass and toasted our parents with practiced grace. Marcus followed, quoting a philosopher I'd never heard of. Then, someone, probably Aunt Nadina, called out, "Avery, your turn." I hesitated. My fork hovered over lamb. Dad looked at me and smirked. "Sure. Let's hear from the family artist." I stood, heart thudding against my ribs. "I don't have a rehearsed speech," I began, "but I just wanted to say thank you for showing us that longevity in love is possible, even when—" That's as far as I got. My father raised his glass and cut me off, laughing. "Maybe spare us the poetry this time, huh? Let's keep it festive." The room chuckled. My cheeks burned. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Everyone was watching. I smiled. Small, tight. Sat back down. No one said a word. Not even my mother. The band started playing again. Claire leaned over and whispered, "You're too sensitive. It's just his way." But it wasn't just his way. It was always his way. Every dig disguised as humor. Every interruption framed as, "Lighten up." Every time I opened my mouth and got edited in real time. And suddenly I saw it, all layers of biting my tongue, of trying to be polite, palatable, pleasant, of shrinking. The lamb on my plate had gone cold. The wine tasted bitter. My hands trembled under the tablecloth. So I stood up. Again. Only this time, I didn't raise a glass. I didn't say a word. I picked up my clutch, nodded once to no one in particular, and walked straight out through the garden. Past the fairy lights, past the topiaries, past the vintage rolls they'd rented for photos. No one followed me. I got in my car, drove away. Windows down, dress fluttering. And for the first time in a decade, I wasn't leaving in shame. I was leaving in silence. And silence, I realized, can be its own revolution. Part 4. The vanishing act that built me. After that night, I didn't make a dramatic announcement. No explosive group chat exit. No phone calls. Just silence. I didn't attend Marcus's daughter's recital. I missed Claire's charity gala. I skipped Thanksgiving, Christmas, even my mother's birthday brunch. At first, there were texts. "Are you okay?" Then came the sarcasm. "Too busy for family now?" Eventually, nothing. And that was the gift. Without the constant echo of their expectations, I finally had room to hear my own voice. I moved across the state, to a small coastal town where no one knew the Harrington name. I rented a one-bedroom loft above a florist shop and took on small interior projects, quiet homes, thoughtful spaces. I started sketching again. Not for clients. For myself. I spent mornings walking barefoot across hardwood floors, coffee in one hand, pencils in the other. The stillness felt strange at first, like wearing shoes on the wrong feet. But then it started to feel like truth. One day, an email arrived from an architecture studio in Oregon. They had seen my work on a blog. Someone had posted photos of a sunroom I redesigned with floating light sculptures. "We're launching a wellness retreat," the email said. "Would you be open to leading the spatial concept?" I blinked at the screen, reread it twice. It wasn't a job offer. It was a doorway. That project became the heartbeat of my year. I poured myself into it, every wood grain, every window angle, every choice designed for breathability and beauty. And when the retreat opened 6 months later, it was covered by Archform magazine under the title, Nature, Reimagined, a living space that heals. They quoted me in the article. Not Claire. Not Marcus. Not my father. Me. They asked what inspired the design, and I said, I wanted to build something that made people feel like they belonged, even the quiet ones. With the project's success came a bonus. Not millions, but enough. Enough to stop renting. Enough to choose. I found it one Sunday morning in architectural listing tucked in the corner of a paper catalog. A 2-story home tucked between pines, with wraparound glass walls, a garden that caught fog like silk, and a studio room with skylights. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like possibility. I closed the deal quietly, unpacked in silence. Hung my favorite print, you are allowed to take up space above the fireplace. No housewarming posts. No announcements. Just a whisper to myself. You're not an embarrassment. You're a beginning. And then I started planning the party. I called it The Gathering on the Invitations. White linen cardstock, with blind-pressed floral embossing, hand-addressed in gold ink. No digital RSVP. No event page. Just an old-fashioned reply card tucked inside with one simple line. Let's celebrate what we build for ourselves. I mailed out 35 of them. To friends I met through design school, past clients who became lifelong allies, and 2 mentors who never stopped believing I was more than the artsy one. None went to anyone named Harrington. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was choosing peace. The house was ready just in time. Honeyed wood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, soft pendant lights that cast golden halos at dusk. The garden was where the real magic happened. I hung string lights from cedar posts, scattered rose petals down the stone walkway, and set a long oak table under a linen canopy. Everything was curated with intention. Candles made from bergamot and amber, floral arrangements grown by a woman I met at the farmer's market, a live acoustic duo playing Norah Jones and soft jazz classics. The chef I hired served slow-roasted root vegetables, herbed lamb, and lavender creme brulee in handmade ceramic dishes. People arrived just before sunset. They stepped through the entryway with wide eyes, letting out quiet gasps as they saw the light pouring through the space. This looks like a spread from Elle Decor, someone whispered. But no one said, Did your dad help with this? No one asked, Where's the rest of the family? Because these were people who knew my story. Not the edited version served with wine and judgment, but the real one. The woman who was once called too dramatic, now standing in a home built entirely on her own terms. Later that night, after the toast, after the last song, after the second round of espresso martinis, my friend Zoe pulled me aside near the fire pit. You realize this is your homecoming, right? She said, smiling. I shook my head. No, I whispered. This is the first time I've ever arrived. Someone took a picture of me then. Standing barefoot on the porch, the garden behind me glowing like something out of a dream, string lights wrapped around my wrist like bracelets of light. Zoe posted it the next morning with the caption, She was never lost, just never allowed to lead. That photo? That caption? It lit the fuse. My DMs exploded. Old high school friends, college classmates, even my former art teacher commented, You've always been magic, Avery. But buried between the well wishes and confetti emojis were names I hadn't seen in months. Claire. Marcus. Mom. And then, Dad. They hadn't been invited, but they had seen everything. They saw it the next morning. The photo. The caption. The laughter in the comments. The kind of joy you can't fake. It didn't take long. The first message came from Mom. I saw the pictures. The house looks expensive. Why didn't you tell us? Then Claire. You really planned a whole event and didn't think we might want to be there? Marcus chimed in by tagging me in an old family photo with the caption, Some people forget their roots. And Dad? He sent me a screenshot of Zoe's post with one sentence beneath it. "So this is who you are now?" No question mark. Just quiet accusation. I didn't answer. Not out of spite. But because there was nothing left to explain. They hadn't asked about my life in over a year. Not once had they called to see how I was doing, where I was living, what I was building. But now that there were lights, flowers, applause, suddenly I was theirs again. Their narrative couldn't hold me as the embarrassment anymore. And that made me dangerous. The next day, Claire posted a picture of a Harrington family dinner everyone at a long table, smiling tightly, a caption underneath. "Some things money can't buy. Real love, real connection." The comments poured in. Aunt Nadine. Exactly. Family first, no matter what. Mom. We raised our kids with love. That hasn't changed. Marcus. No egos here. Just roots that don't break. I didn't comment. I didn't react. But someone else did. Zoe screenshot the entire thread and sent it to me with one word. Performative. She wasn't wrong. Because it wasn't love that made them respond. It was loss of control. For the first time, they weren't the narrators of my life. And they couldn't stand it. 3 days later, an email arrived from Dad. Short, cold, heavy. Subject: Your choices. Message: We saw everything. You embarrassed this family. You acted like we didn't exist. You made people think we don't love you. Maybe next time you should think before putting on a show. You should know. People are talking. People were talking. But not in the way he thought. I had just been asked to speak at a Women in Design conference in Vancouver. My inbox was full of collaborations. A podcast host reached out asking for a feature, how to build a life that doesn't ask for permission. And while my family tried to rewrite the narrative in real time, I was living proof of a truth they couldn't bend. I didn't need to prove them wrong. I just needed to stop trying to be right for them. That evening, I lit candles along the garden wall, sat under the stars with a glass of wine, and posted just one sentence to my story white text on black screen. Silence isn't distance. Sometimes it's healing. They watched it. All of them. But this time, they said nothing. The message came quietly. No group thread. No guilt-laced subject line. Just a single text from Claire. Coffee? Just us. No performance. I stared at it for a long moment. Then typed back. Neutral place. No expectations. We met at a quiet cafe, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, kind of sanctuary. She was already there when I arrived, tapping her spoon against a cappuccino, her shoulders unnaturally tight. Hey, she said. I sat down. Hey. For a moment, we said nothing. Then she exhaled hard, breaking the stillness. Look, I know we've been awful. I won't defend it. She stirred her drink slowly. But that party, seeing it online, not being there, it felt like a slap. I raised an eyebrow. A slap? Yes, we were excluded. I took a slow sip of my tea before replying. Claire, I've been excluded my entire life. From jokes, from conversations, from mattering. She looked down. I continued. That night wasn't about revenge. It was the first time I celebrated myself without apology. She nodded slowly. I get that now, or I'm trying to. There was silence again. But this time, it didn't feel combative. Claire finally said. You always scared us, Avery. You never fit into the blueprint. You felt unpredictable. I laughed quietly. You mean I didn't follow the family formula? She smiled faintly. Something like that. Then she looked up, eyes clearer. What would it take for us to try again? I leaned in, calm but firm. You don't get to rewrite me. You don't get to poke fun and call it just teasing. If you want to be in my life, you come in as an equal. No hierarchy, no performance, and absolutely no expectations of access. Claire blinked, then nodded. Okay, she whispered. That's fair. She didn't ask to see the house. Didn't ask for introductions, or invites, or favors. Just this. Can I try to do better? I looked at her for a long moment. You can try. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. But it was real. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to shrink to be heard. 2 weeks later, I got an email from the editorial team at Hearth T Forma design publication I'd admired for years. They wanted to do a full feature, Women Who Build Differently. I almost said no. Then I remembered how long I'd stayed small to make others feel big. I said yes. The interview was honest. I talked about leaving a life where I was constantly the footnote. About designing homes, not just for beauty, but for breadth. For people who had been made to feel like too much, or not enough. They asked about inspiration. I didn't name names. But I did say this. Sometimes, the places we leave shape us just as much as the ones we build. When the article came out, they used a photo of me standing barefoot in my studio, sunlight streaming through the skylight, paint smudges on my fingertips. The caption read, Avery Harrington, 33, built her space the way she lives deliberately, and without asking for permission. It went quietly viral. Design clients reached out. Old professors sent notes of pride. Even a woman I once met at a networking event messaged, Your story helped me walk away from people who never clapped for me. And my family? They watched in silence. No more passive-aggressive posts. No more guilt-laced voicemails. Just the quiet realization that they no longer held the center of my orbit. That weekend, I hosted another dinner's mall, intimate. Mentors, friends, Zoe, and Claire. She brought a bottle of wine and a simple bouquet of wildflowers. As we cleared the table that night, she lingered by my bookshelf, running her fingers across the spines. You know, she said, I think this is the first time I've seen you without armor. I smiled. That's because it's the first time I've felt safe without it. Later, after everyone left, I walked out into the garden, barefoot again. The string lights swayed gently. A soft wind danced across my collarbone. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need a headline. Just this. Space. Stillness. And the knowing that I hadn't burned bridges. I'd simply built a better home. Where I no longer had to beg for a seat at the table. Because this time, I made the table.